I used an online website to determine the segment lengths. I'd wanted a 6-inch diameter circle, so you plug in, thickness of wood, etc., and it'll tell you the length that it needs to be. I've already set at a 45-degree angle. And before you people go crazy about my method of removing the cut off pieces, this is a technique I've learned over 30 years ago, where if you notice my hand, I always keep it on the fence. And I do this anytime I ever work with any wood on the table saw. My hand never goes near the blade. This way I'm not working with a push stick. Now this is probably the smallest piece I will ever work with where I would use this method. Otherwise I do have push sticks. I'm going to demonstrate a couple methods of gluing up the various pieces here to make the segmented bowl portion. So if you notice, I put glue on one end and then I spread it around and then move to a new piece and put it together. And this way you're really only gluing two pieces at a time. If you also notice, it's not a whole lot of glue. It doesn't take much. And you'll even see where that first piece I started with, it's already in a good enough shape that you can connect to the rest of it. First method just had the glue basically set aside to dry. This method I'm actually going to use a rubber band to help tighten it up a little bit. You'll see the last connection I made had just a very small slight gap. The rubber band will pull it tight and actually help to keep it closed. This method is where I've glued up 4 pieces, and if you notice it's just 2 right there, and what you can do is you can check to see how tight the fit is. It happened to be pretty good in this case. I can go forward. But otherwise, you can take those half pieces and go over to a sanding station and flatten and just adjust as needed in order to get it to fit as tight as possible. So even with this, using the same piece of wood at the same thickness, there's going to be some unevenness. All I'm doing is a quick hand sand to help flatten it. If you're using different types or different thicknesses, that round disc I can attach to the lathe and spin very fast and make it very flat very quick. This is the round walnut piece that I had from a previous project that I just wanted to reuse. It happened to be 6 inches in diameter. So in this case, I'm just applying some glue on top. I happen to get a little too much on this one. You'll even see me wipe it off. But there's a technique here that I saw a long time ago where once you go to put the piece on top with all that glue, sometimes it'll slide around. So all you do is you take some heavy grit sandpaper, rub it over it, get some of the grit to fall on it, and it acts as almost like a sand, and it'll help you line it up, and it helps it and keeps it from sliding. So this is all the layers I'm going to use. You're going to see me grab a piece of wood. I'm going to check a couple places just to make sure I don't have it too far off center. And that edge will just make sure that it'll be a little more even than when I put it on the lathe. Now I'm going to use something from the tailstock that I can keep this from, keep some additional pressure on it until I get it completely round. And all that is just a carpet mat or a rubber mat to keep things from sliding around. Bring your tailstock over with the other piece and make it nice and tight. And remember, safety first, always wear a face shield. I've got a lot of the outside mostly flat, just transitioning over to a round cutting head just to go nice and slow. You'll see how the chips are nice and long, which means it's mostly completely flat. I'm mostly happy with the outside with it being round. Now I can remove the support from the tailstock, then I can start working on the inside. I used the online tool for the 6-inch and it gave me a distance or a thickness of the segment pieces to cut. I happened to double it because I wasn't all that familiar with that methodology from that website. And now you can see that I really could have made my segment pieces thinner. And now I have an awful lot of material to remove. I removed an awful lot of material from the inside. Now I have the wall thickness that I'm interested in. I'm just going to start shaping the outside. I happen to like a little bit of a flare from the bottom up. You could keep it flat. In this case, I don't over exaggerate the flare, just a little bit to give it a little visual interest. And although I tried to flatten the portions of the segments when I glued them up, some of them just weren't exactly the way I wanted. So this technique here, all I'm doing is taking at those lines. I'm going to create a little bit of a recess. And what this will do is I'm going to bring in a wire that's connected with 2 pieces of dowel. And all you're going to do is at a relatively low speed, you take the wire, you place it into that groove, and as it spins, it will begin to score, burn, and actually will create a very dark black line, which will look great. And although this technique would be mostly used for bowls, this happens to be a planter. We're going to put a pot inside this that will hold a plant. So I wanted to try this triple thick polyurethane. Before I made this, I had made a table where I put this very thick polyurethane on it, and it seems to be very, very tough. If you notice, just putting it on with a synthetic brush, not being overly careful, and you'll see in a minute why. Then with that, you just let it sit, and you're going to see how this turns out. So just let it sit for 30 minutes. That happens to be 320 grit sandpaper. Just do a simple sanding on it, and then I'm going to add another coat, and I'll also finish that off with another 320 grit sand as well.